Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, June 19th, 2024, and we're going to be answering three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last few days. And as we do each week, we take our questions for the Midweek Roundup from our newsletter that comes out on Monday mornings. And that is available in two formats. You can subscribe to it through our website at smieconsulting.org/subscribe, or you can get a LinkedIn version of it. And between the two of them now, we have over 1,950 subscribers, closing in on 2,000 by probably the end of July. So we're very excited about that many international educators getting their at least part of their news each week from SMIE Consulting. So thanks again for those of you who are already subscribed. If you're not, I'm dropping the link to the website and this most recent email version of that newsletter into the chat, as well as the LinkedIn version of the newsletter if you'd like to subscribe that way. So those two versions plus the Midweek Roundup constitute the bulk of our free services that we provide for our audience in international education circles. Those who prefer with the Roundup, this is live at 1 p.m. Eastern Time each week across our SMIE Consulting social media platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you don't prefer to watch the live, most folks don't, and we're all busy, but do catch it on repeat, at least the video version, you have that available. But there's also an audio-only version that you can subscribe to on all your favorite podcast providers, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, whatever you're using. So please do take advantage of that as you plan out your international education news that you digest each week. I know you have many options out there, but we're happy to provide our insights through the newsletter, where we give you our hot takes on kind of the key issues in social media, webinars, white papers, digital reports, social media activity, as well as what's happening in the United States in terms of news, solutions that might be out there in our profession to help us improve what we do international education-wise on our campuses, and then also a global roundup, because part of what we talk about every week at SMIE Consulting is about the need for perspective on how we talk about our institutions, in context of what the United States has to offer international students, as well as what other destinations are doing, and being aware of what's happening in other countries that can impact potential opportunities for us in the United States to better market what we have, not only as institutions, but collectively as the United States for international student audiences. So let's get right into our first question of the day. And that is, what are the merits of international student surveys? Now, we touched on this a little bit last week because there was a rather large one that popped up with Keystone that had over 20-odd thousand students from 100 plus countries around the world that really provided a broad range of students from around the globe to give us some insights as to what they are feeling, what their priorities were, all of that. But since then, we've also seen about three other student surveys pop up in the last few days, and we'll touch on a couple of them. One of them is by AECC, one of the larger aggregators out there for international student recruitment through agent networks. They have done a prospective international student survey with about 8,300 respondents, 124 countries. The vast percentage of students that were surveyed are considering studying abroad and are in that prospective phase. So about 7% were already starting. 13% of those surveyed were maybe planning to, but then started or completed studies in their home country. And then there were about 7.5% that were still pursuing or still in high school in their home country, and about 1.5% that had already completed their studies abroad that were surveyed. Top respondents in this survey: India, Philippines, Nigeria, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Singapore. So obviously the biggest name not on that list is China. So that just is always part of what you want to look at when you're looking at any survey results, is how reflective are they of the broader international student audience that are studying abroad, and particularly in the United States. And then specifically, how do they match up with students that are coming to your institution or markets where you're active? So the AACC survey looked at things like looked at things like safety perceptions. New Zealand was top, the US was bottom, but difference of about 0.7% about 0.7% on a 10-point scale, 8.58 down to 7.89. So US's perception of safety had actually dropped in the rankings over the last 2 years since this survey was done. In fact, most countries had dropped. About the only one that didn't is Germany, which increased to 8.53. So in a tight race for second and third with Australia. That was the primary one of the things that they looked at. Post-study intentions. Over 70% of prospective students surveyed with this AACC survey shared their intentions to return to their home country following studies and pursue postgraduate work experience in their preferred study destination. Of those who wanted to return home, of those surveyed, that 55.65% wanted to work or study further and then return to their home country. 15.89% were wanting to return home immediately. So it's about, that's at 70%. So some wanted to work first in their destination country and then go home. And another smaller percentage, less than 16%, wanted to return immediately after completion of studies. And almost 29% indicated they want to migrate to their preferred study country. And we all know the challenges of saying that, particularly when you're looking at the United States as an incoming student that may not have those similar challenges in other nations. So the importance of post-study work rights, and this is something we've been emphasizing as we look at not just individual student surveys, but surveys over a period of time and months and years, how those trends change. This is one of those topics that consistently rises to the top of what students are most interested in choosing their study destinations. So importance of that post-study work rights is extremely important for prospective international students, with 78.93% of 78.93, and said it was extremely important that post-grad work rights are important to them. So in addition to that 78.93%, you had 19% said moderately important, and only 2% said not important at all. So overwhelming majority, so roughly 98% are saying in this survey that post-study work rights are extremely important or moderately important to them. So all have value for that in that particular function of international education. So what are the motivations for preferred study destinations? Quality was top in this list of 38.2%. Then if you combine job opportunities and post-study graduate work rights, you have 36.5%. So those are the top two major categories, and the rest are split between 1 to 4% each. So affordability was the next highest at 5.2%. And all those, and you put in migration opportunities and job opportunities, you're looking at well over 40% if you put that and the post-study work rights and job opportunities into one bucket. So clearly the quality and work opportunities and potential migration opportunities are the most significant factors driving choice of destination. So what have, of the 8,300 that were surveyed, there were 1,280 who responded that said they changed their minds about the preferred study destination in the last year. And that represents about a little less than 16% of all those surveyed. So that change in study destination, and we can obviously look at, this was from March of 2024, we know what destinations are probably changing from. Canada, UK, Australia, because of the government changes in net migration policies and work rights, and also crackdowns on dodgy agents and vocational colleges that are less than above board. So in at least a couple of those countries. So that's what we're really dealing with on that survey. So there's some really other good data that I'll drop the link to the survey in there about to give you some feedback on what we're talking about there. The next platform, or the next survey result, is from TAP, the Ambassador platform acquired by IDP in the last few months, and they have put out a report. Do you know what future students really want? And this is revealing insights from about 4,000 prospective students worldwide. So this is, they've done similar versions of this in the past, and this is their latest one. So 4,000, so it's about half as many as the AECC survey, and talks about, the focus of their report is on the differences between what students want and how universities, what universities think they need. So they've interviewed students and universities for this particular survey. So those are the disconnects I always find most revealing in terms of where the gaps are, because we all have our individual flows and messages that we think are important as institutions, but how reflective are they of what your audiences, your future student audiences, want to hear? And this is something that all institutions should be paying attention to. We should be doing this with focus groups with our new students that enroll, is to say, hey, what were the messages you got in emails? Were they accurate? Were they helpful? Were they worthless? Did you just delete them? Tell us about that. We should already be doing stuff like that as part of our ongoing reviews of what we say and how we say it. Are we being effective with our messaging to the students that enroll? If we're not doing it effectively with them, think how even less effective it has been with those that you are emailing and never hear from again, or never complete their applications, or just kind of disappear after they're admitted because it's too hard to get their I-20s out. So that's all things that are very valuable to know. So the kind of questions that are asked are certainly can help provide, I think, some good information as you look to diversify your approach to international student recruitment and develop policies that are changeable to circumstances that are going on in the wider world. And we certainly have had a lot of those in recent years with the pandemic, and now with these government changes to overpopulation for international students in at least 3 major markets where migration numbers are becoming all important as policy drivers for politicians. So the third survey was a much smaller one. It was done by Teradata here in the United States, that surveyed 356 international students currently at U.S. institutions to get feedback from them on what the drivers were for them in terms of where they enrolled, what their concerns are of those students on campus, that type of thing. So that's a different take on the mix, probably more reflective of the actual experiences of what students are going, but it's a small sample size of 356 out of over 1 million international students currently in the U.S. So take it for what you will. What the Teradata survey revealed is 3 key areas: that there's an expanding influence of educational agents, that 70% of those 365 students sought personalized support from educational agents and recruiters, and that agents only represent 10 to 25% of the international students to the colleges that participated in the survey. That 92% for college, or from the student perspective, said 92% described services provided by agents as indispensable. That working from the university side, educational agents were responsible for expanding their global reach, and most 82% expect to use agents more closely. What also did the stats reveal that that there is a need to have programs and policies in place that are focusing on establishing a great support structure for international students on campus, that student support service, again, throughout their journey, very important, as identified in the survey. Campus safety, all of these things need to be emphasized. That kind of no-brainers for anyone who's been in ISSS offices. There was a further indication that there should not be, that academic quality needs to be maintained to keep these students engaged, and that you need to help them find jobs after graduation. So some very important pieces there. So that's what we have for you. Different kinds, 3 very different kinds of surveys, different focuses of what they are trying to achieve and kind of their end goals with that, to show either how out of line your institution policies might be and communication might be with prospective students, and or how in sync what you're saying is with what your audience wants to hear. So each one has their own merits. But I never go all in and saying, hey, one survey is going to make or break how you change the way you do things. But it certainly is, if you see patterns over time, and the patterns over time that we talked about last week that we see reflected in these surveys as well, is that those work opportunities, for those outcomes for when the students are finishing their degree, not only for what you as an institution can provide and maybe a track record of success in helping international students find those jobs, but also on a larger scale, what does the U.S. do for international students in terms of, hey, if you're STEM, you've got 3 years of post-study work per degree level from bachelor's, master's, and doctorate. What does that look like? And how many of your students are graduating on and going into STEM OPT programs? So these are the things that matter for future students, and the surveys are consistent in responding to that. So let's jump into the second question of the week, and that is, what makes a sustainable international recruitment strategy? And sustainable means successful, really long term. So one of the pieces that I want to focus on today is kind of a pledge that was created by the U.S. for Success Coalition. If you're not familiar with them, they formed last fall. It's a coalition of a variety of international ed-focused institutions and higher ed-focused institutions in the United States. And basically, they've done a fairly good job in terms of being better advocates for our sector with the federal government. They've advocated for, particularly in the last few months, for a focus within the State Department on visa granting challenges in developing worlds in the global South. And I will say quite openly and honestly that much of the success of this group, of the U.S. for Success Coalition, is down to leadership of someone that I've known and admired in international education for well over 15 years, and that's Fanta Ah, formerly at American University, and for the last year and a bit at NAFSA as its CEO and executive director. So her focus on where she came from Africa in the global South, is really, she's a living, breathing example of what we want future international students to come and experience and become. And she's become a leader in our field, one of the top thought leaders and de facto leaders in international education in our country. And she represents a lot of what us in the field have been clamoring for years in terms of what our government policies need to be more aligned with the overall success and helping students make that decision to come. And once they're here, help develop policies that embrace them and allow them to thrive and succeed, and provide them the opportunities that they need when they're done, and have as less regulated, more lightly regulated system, I guess, or more streamlined system for employment post completion of studies. So what is this? U.S. for Success Coalition, they've come up with something called Higher Ed Signatories to the U.S. for Success Coalition Pledge. And what this pledge is really designed to do is to as part of the coalition's attempt to increase and diversify international student enrollment and post-graduation pathways across all U.S. states and territories. The commitment of the coalition is to including a broad range of higher ed institutions, including private colleges and universities, flagship institutions, community colleges, HBCUs, minority-serving institutions, and to supporting all colleges and universities in their efforts to achieve these goals. So what does the pledge involve? And I'll read it verbatim as to what it covers. In joining as signatories, institutions express their commitment to supporting policies, initiatives, and actions that attract a diverse pool of international students to the United States and that promote their success on campus after graduation. In pursuit of our shared goals, signatories agree to, and there are 7 things, commit to enhancing collaboration with campus partners to forge a coordinated approach to increasing and diversifying international student enrollment. Love that. Number 2, advocates for responsible internationalization within signatories' own institutions and with other actors within their sphere of influence, including elected officials, so the advocacy piece. 3, prioritize diversifying and increasing the number of international students within signatories' student recruitment and retention strategies. Obviously, diversification is something we always talk about here. 4, embed the goals of increasing and diversifying international student enrollment and success in the institution's strategic or enrollment and retention plans. 5, commit to student success through initiatives, actions, and ensure responsible and ethical practices in international student recruitment. 6, commit to supporting international students in their post-graduation pathways. 7, promote signatories' commitment to the mission of the coalition. So this is for SEVIS certified institutions to sign on for. So if you haven't already seen this, definitely, I'm dropping a link in the chat. Definitely put this on the radar of your senior leadership. If you're not the SIO who can maybe sign off for the institution, run that up the chain to your provost and presidents to see if they will be able to sign on to this, because it's an acknowledgement that these need to be priorities for us in international education at our institutions, and that this will help. No, it's just a pledge. There's something binding there, but it is a public commitment to what we believe in, right, as international educators. And I don't think there's anything on that list of 7 things, those 7 parts of that we could sign up, that your institution could sign on to, that as international educators we wouldn't agree with. And if we get presidents and provosts to see this and say, yes, we need to be doing more of this, we need to be putting international into our strategic vision for the institution, into our enrollment plans, into our retention plans, because all of those are connected. And if your institution can acknowledge that, that's something you can sign on. You can make sure that's a extra hook you have for how you recruit. When you can say in your messaging that as an institution, our top leadership, presidents and provosts, have signed on to this pledge, and obviously get permission to be able to say that, but have that somewhere on your site that indicates on the public-facing international student site that shows, or link to it, that shows that your president, your provost, has signed on to this pledge. That it is a goal of the institution to become more international student friendly, to recognize the needs that students coming to this country have, to bring students from a wider range of countries to our campuses, and to make sure that they're taken care of not only while they're on our campuses, but are better prepared for the challenges of the work world when they leave our colleges. That has value. And why does that matter? Because if we can get our institutions to publicly say this, that's something we can use in how we talk about our institutions. Our institution has committed to this U.S. for Success Coalition principles and has committed to doing X, Y, and Z, all of the 7 things. Make that available and known to your future students so they can say, yes, hey, you're serious about bringing students like me to the United States, to your campus. That matters. So policies that you have on campus that, again, take into consideration the full life cycle of international students, not just getting them in the door. Because if you just get them in the door and you don't have services in place to really take care of them and graduate them successfully, you've failed as an institution. don't even bother trying to sign this agreement, sign this pledge. But another voice in the field that I respect well, and someone I've traveled with in the past, Brian Gross, who's at Hartwick College in New York, Oneonta, New York. He's written the voice of the sector for this month for IDP. It's The World as Our Campus, Embracing a Holistic International Enrollment Strategy. So his article, Brian is someone I've known for almost 2 decades now, traveled with him in India in 2005-06, and almost died on a highway between Pune and Mumbai late at night. But we both survived that, and now he's been a leader, past president of AIRC, and a leader in the field that I certainly respect and admire. But Brian's post here for IDP is with embracing a holistic international enrollment strategy, embodies everything that pledge just talked about from the U.S. for Success Coalition. So if you haven't read that and the coalition pledge, do so, because it really will tell you a lot about what I feel is the priority for every institution in the United States in developing strategies and recruitment efforts that meet the needs of your future students and prepare them for success when they graduate. So that's what makes it sustainable, when you can serve the students you have well and promote outcomes to your future students that they can see, hey, that's me. There's a student like me who's now doing X, Y, or Z and being successful in their field. I want to be like that person. That is what sells an institution, that and making sure you get your I-20s to them early in the process so they have time to get their visas before everything goes absolutely into chaos in the summer months before the fall enrollments. So make sure that you are focused on that sustainable piece by being successful with your services and taking care of the students you have. Now, the final question of the day, and this is one that we'll spend about 3 or 4 minutes on, and that is, will there be massive layoffs at Aussie and British universities? Why do we have this conversation? We talked last week about the impacts of government regulations in Canada, in the UK, in Australia on future international student interest. We've seen already the governments restrict specifically who can come in now. That previously allowed hundreds of thousands of students to come into Canada for private PPP vocational programs that inflated the numbers and put huge strains on local housing and health services in a lot of cities around Canada. In the UK, you see similar things happening with the elimination of the dependent visa that allowed students in master's or bachelor's programs to bring family members with them. There was huge spikes in those numbers, so those numbers have been cut out. You've seen a 27% reduction in applications to UK universities for this year, and corresponding drops in the number of visa applications filed. In Australia, you see caps being put on net migration as well, or a 50% reduction is anticipated in net migration numbers to Australia. Our international students are going to be part of that. There's not real clarity yet on what percentage of the reduction will become for students, but for the Australian universities that are involved, there are significant consequences. In the UK, there are 70-80% of British universities within 2 to 3 years will be running deficits and will be forced to lay off staff. Some already have. In Canada, you see a lot of the private colleges probably that focus on vocational education are going to be forced to close. They're really the targets of these government caps in Canada of reducing 30-35% this year and next year of visa numbers international students coming to Canada. There are some loopholes that will allow for expansion in other areas, particularly in master's degrees, that may make Canada a different kind of market, and that's probably a good thing. But in Australia, there's 2 articles this week that are pointing to the differences or the real challenges of one article from Nairametrics that takes, it's a Nigerian outlet that says that this is a tough one to read, Australian authorities project a loss of 250,000 jobs dependent on foreign students. And that includes 4,500 university jobs that could be jeopardized by the plans to limit international student enrollments. You have another article that says 2,000 jobs have already been lost, and that's just the tip of the iceberg in the foreign education sector within Australia. We talked a couple weeks ago about IDP, largest international education service provider in the world. They're laying off 6% of their global staff because of the reductions or these government policies in Canada, Australia, UK. 3 of the 4 big 4 are all seeing reductions now because of these policy changes. So the final article that talks about UK universities, that the funding shortage I mentioned earlier. So Barron's article that is saying that there are going to be more than half who already bumped down on the list in the rankings, and that is having to do with the reductions in the numbers, the government policies, and you now are seeing drops in applications, funding shortages. There's going to be layoffs there. So there are some major consequences coming down the pipe for international students that are applying, looking at least those three of the 4 big 4 English-speaking destination countries. Is that opening opportunities in other countries? Absolutely. We already have heard what that means for international students that might be looking at coming to the United States. That we've seen some increases over the last couple of years post-pandemic. We'll probably see another bump this year as well, this fall, if we can get all the students who want visas to get through the process, if we can address the visa issuance challenges or the visa rejection rate challenges that we've seen. So there's a whole lot of mess that even we could be facing here in the United States with the coming months and what the election might produce for us. So a lot of different things that could be affecting what we do. But we're seeing a lot of opportunity, I think, in the United States for growth, and that's something we all need to be focused on if we can take advantage of the opportunities. Some of the student survey results reflect what we need to be doing. Some of what the U.S. for Success Coalition is saying we need to be doing and implementing more holistic policies on campus that take into account that full life cycle for international students. So that's all we have for you this week on the Midweek Roundup. Thanks for taking the time to be part of the conversation today. Looking forward to chatting with you in the weeks and months to come. Have a great day.